see you again. Joining us now to go through the headlines making the newspapers, making the airwaves all over today. Former Home Office Special Advisor Claire Purcell and journalist Andy Jones. Very good to see both of you. Claire, we're going to start with the Daily Mail, and this is about prison capacity. There isn't enough of it. There never seems to be enough of it. There's not enough staff, and that will result in what?
This is prisoners to be let out early, or as the Daily Mail has put it, violent prisoners to be let out early. Now, I think that we would all understand the prison estate is full. At the moment, there aren't enough spaces. I believe there are currently about 550 spaces free. So what the government are looking to do to relieve the pressure is to allow some people to be let out 18 days earlier than their sentence is for. It's going to be in targeted areas, according to Alex Chalk, the Justice Secretary, and it's going to be targeted at certain crimes. So it isn't going to be rapists, they're not going to be allowed out, but they are violent crimes. These are actual bodily harm, these are assault cases. The government have a really difficult job because there aren't prisons being built, there haven't been prisons being built, and I think successive governments have failed categorically in looking at what they want the justice system to achieve. And just by looking like you're tough on crime and putting these people away isn't going to solve the problem.
I always find it interesting when they always say, you know, we haven't built any new prisons where no one will want a new prison on their doorstep. Why can't we just stick another floor on the existing ones, or dig another floor underground, a double floor basement? There's got to be potential to expand the prisons that we've got. We don't have to build new ones.
It's not just having that capacity by having these sort of multi-storey prisons. You've got to staff them. You've got to have the infrastructure to deal with it, and that's what you don't have. So you can't just put a load of people into one space if you don't have the staff or the facilities. And it also questions what you want to do with the justice system. If you're looking at it for rehabilitation, then just racking and stacking people in prison and forgetting about them isn't going to achieve that.
Back in the community to commit more crimes isn't rehabilitation either.
I spent a lot of time, maybe 2 months, twice last year in a rehabilitation centre, right? Rehabilitation for my body, not for my mind or violent crime or anything else like that. And, you know, okay, I had people come to my room, people who could dress me, people who could bring me food, whatever. And they were really lovely and very professional. And I hated every moment of it. The idea of I could have TV to watch, but the idea of being incarcerated, which I was, I had one visitor came for me one Saturday afternoon.
Just the
eventually,
one. Nonsense. You had loads.
Eventually. And, but you know, I have to say, it made me think, if you were in prison, I mean, I'm getting the good side of it, and people talk about, oh, prison's like a hotel and whatever. I reckon it must be the most horrible experience.
The removal of liberty and us having to share a very confined space, probably with another cellmate, is the impactful part, regardless of whether you get TV or get to eat pizza once a week. There are 88,200 prison places in the UK. There are currently only 550 of them free. And as Claire was saying, there are those on sentences who are up to 4 years they're going to knock. If you've got a sentence up to 4 years, so quite serious, but not the very, very serious crimes, they're going to knock 18 days off, so they've got more room. There was a story in the Times at the weekend that rapists, there's not necessarily room to put them in prison, so they're delaying their sentencing a little bit longer so that they can have prison places. There was an extension, I don't know whether it's a completely new prison at Leicester Fosse, there was an extension to a prison which is going to create 2,000 places, but as Claire says, it's not about buildings, it's about can we get prison staff? Can we get young people or even older people who want to be prison officers?
Imagine how many people are in there on drug-related issues as well. If you could just cure that problem.
Well, also the ones with very mild and extensive mental health problems, they just shut them in because it's like, well, you might need 2, 3, 4 prison officers to manage someone with mental health problems.
I was listening to a phone-in yesterday on the radio when I was driving, and they had lots of convicts ringing in, people who'd been to prison. And I have to say, the picture that people who have been through the prison service that were on these calls were painting a fairly glossy picture of it, talking about how everyone just went in and got shredded. They were going to the gym every day, state-of-the-art gym facilities, everybody in tip-top condition, access to TV.
Get stronger and fitter to beat you up more.
When you come out, you can be more dominating on your beat or whatever. I definitely don't think it's as hard as it could be. I certainly think that I'm a passionate believer in rehabilitation, really passionate believer in it, but I also think it should be a punishment to be sent to prison and not just a gym membership.
I don't know what those people are used to in their day-to-day lives, but I can tell you that, you know, what I experienced last year, I wouldn't want to be that or anything tougher than that as well.
But I think the problem is that you have people in there with a first offence, especially sort of younger people who may have addiction issues, who may have mental health issues, are being put in prison for relatively minor crimes, and then they just pick up worse habits. They learn how to become a criminal, and I think that's what you need to look at. You need to look at what you're doing for those kind of individuals. There are some that you want to keep away from society, and rightly so, but it's always difficult for every government that comes in. They want to be tough on crime, they want to say they're protecting people, and they go about this in the wrong way.
The final point, in this political climate, we're talking about we've got to lock up people who are anti-Semitic, we've got to lock up people who are a threat to the state. Well, where are you going to put them? And then this becomes another problem. Every government, and Keir Starmer, talking about being tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime, locking people up. There was a murmurs from the Labour Party yesterday about locking people up for deliberately misgendering somebody. I mean, good luck finding the prison space.
Where do you stand on dialects? A Yorkshire dialect teacher is over the moon as his tyke classes have been fully booked. His name's Rod Dimbleby. He's running a 6-week Let's Talk tyke lessons.
What do you mean, lesson? What lessons?
What counts as a dialect lesson?
Let's talk what lessons?
Tyke.
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 Yeah. This is in a
Yorkshire dialect.
Yorkshire library.
Yeah, and it's fully subscribed. And basically, he's saying that most of his students are old age pensioners, and young people aren't interested. And the only time they've ever heard this sort of original Yorkshire language is from their grandparents. Is that a good thing or a bad thing that evolves, or whatever your dialect is becomes less and less? I mean, do you have an area? Do you have a dialect? I mean, there's a whole separate language in Northern Ireland that I could speak or adhere to and understand. I think it'd be a great shame if we lost that, so I can identify with that. Do you have this or not?
I don't. I mean, I'm fascinated by dialect because I wasn't born here. I was born abroad from an army family.
Where were you born?
I was born in Cyprus on a British army base, and I've moved around.
My wife was born in Singapore.
My father was also born in Singapore.
Army base as well.
Exactly. So you don't necessarily gain an accent from where you are. I lived in Southampton, so I had a bit of a Hampshire accent, then moved up to Dartford in Kent. So my mother always said that I picked up the estuary English, and she didn't like it so much.
Yes.
But it is fascinating, and I think language is evolving as it should. But I love the regional variations, the little phrases that people have that keep them into a community and can put them into those kind of places. But I think if we lose that, it would be really, really sad.
And all of these little fibres of what knits into a community make that community stronger.
What's your accent? What is that accent?
I used to have a Birmingham accent. I've lost it a little bit more when I go back to West Brom games and start shouting things in the stands. I get a little bit more.
You're sort of
colourful.
Essex or something there.
Me? How dare you? I'm absolutely not Essex. I have had that before. I don't know why I've picked it up. But what I will say is we're losing that common fabric. We'll talk about the Welsh language dying out as Welsh teenagers speak more emoji and text speak than they do Welsh. And I think we lose that sense of what we are. I think people now identify far more with what's going on in America. I don't know, George Floyd, for instance, than they do what's happening in their local community, their local bar. People will have strong and vivid opinions about Israel and Palestine, as they absolutely well should, but they've got no opinion on their gas bill. They've got no opinion on what's going on in their local school or their local area.
Who's had their tonsils taken out?
No.
No, not for me, Isabel. No.
Mine are still in, yeah.
Yeah, well, okay.
Because
Well,
if you haven't,
if you haven't,
sorry.
having your tonsils removed in childhood is linked with a greater risk of arthritis in old age.
Really? How does that work?
Yeah, it's new.
How does that work? Children are more at risk if they've had an older sibling, suggesting early life environmental factors play a role in the disease of having your tonsils removed. So I have an older sibling, but no, it hasn't affected me. So anyway, this type of chronic inflammatory arthritis is more likely to hit you if you've had your tonsils removed.
It's quite shocking. Definitely
what's
not
the
told.
link?
Parents
Why?
definitely aren't told that when their kids go in for tonsil removal, are they? But maybe they will be now. Claire, should we talk about The Crown? And
Yes.
Elizabeth Debicki, who portrays Diana so incredibly well. At times, I actually have to really remind myself I'm not watching Diana.
Absolutely.
But it's, a few weeks now until this next series comes out. And during this next season, she depicts the split from Charles and then her tragic death. And she talks about how this has been a huge challenge.
And she looks so much like her, and I agree with you. Whenever you watch it, you have to remember you're not watching a documentary.
Yeah.
This is actually a drama. And what Elizabeth Debicki is saying is that this has had a massive impact on her. Looking and being in that life and playing that role has drained her. And when you start to look at the circumstances surrounding Diana's time up to her sad death and beyond, I mean, she was a figure in all of our lives. And it is quite interesting the amount of people who still have those really strong feelings. There are some people who think that this should never be aired, she shouldn't be playing Princess Diana, and we shouldn't be looking at her death or what happens afterwards, and we should just leave it alone. But I think people are still absolutely fascinated by it, so I can't wait for this one to come out.
Does anyone else think about how the boys must feel about it? Because I imagine if I'm questioning at times, I have to stop my brain tricking myself. You know, if Harry's a young boy, lost his mum, what was he, 11, 12, you'd be tempted to watch it, wouldn't you? And then that would be... I mean, no one else can ever really relate to that scenario. When your mum's the most famous woman in the world, and then someone else is acting her brilliantly.
But I think
Very
you just
traumatic
cut
event.
yourself off from it, because they have had throughout their lives people looking at their family setup, making comments about their mother and their father, and I think you probably have to just detach yourself from it. But it's got to be hurtful, but I think that they know well enough just to turn these things off and not watch.
Okay, talking about turning off, what about turning on? Andy, we're reaching that time of the year where I have to say I got up to it and I thought it's very chilly, very, very chilly. Does the central heating go back on, or does it stay off for a while longer?
Oh, this is it. Are you going to wear your gilet under your suit on the way to work? Is it getting time for the big coat? Are you going to swap the big duvet on?
Out this morning.
Big coat? Have you got the big duvet?
I'm going to Scotland
Oh, the big
today.
duvet came out, yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
I thought
The
it's
big
going to be
coat.
colder in Scotland, so I thought I'd better take the big coat. I'm not sure how I carry it with my suitcase whenever
It's going to just be wet. You're going to have floods and things up in Scotland.
But if you have that wind at the weekend, and it was in Ireland, and that wind was biting,
Yeah,
you're
it goes right through you.
It got into my bones, and I couldn't
Yeah.
get rid of it.
Yeah, this is a study on the front page of the Daily Star. 35% of families row over the heating. 43% fight about who's left the lights on. I mean, big cutting stuff in the Daily Star. But it's conversations we're all having. I'll say my Californian wife, who's very, very used to hot climates, she loves the cold. We've still got all of our windows open.
What?
It's like living in a cave, honestly. I
I was
honestly
not expecting
find
you
it
to say that. No.
very, very... windows are open.
Well, she should come and live in our house. We might as well not bother having
No.
windows. They're like paper.
Well, my husband decided
we
the
embrace
heating
the cold.
should go on. He decided it was cold. He decreed it was freezing, and therefore the heating was going on.
He's a lot older than you.
A couple of years.
He would feel it.
But you know what he does?
What, Nigel?
And my common phrase of the moment is, "Were you born in a barn?" He goes out of the back door,
Leaves the
it
door open.
wide open. So I sit there at my desk freezing and then shutting the door, and it's like all of that money we're spending on heating, you're just letting out. So that's my phrase at the moment.
Well, I seem to be the only person in our house who ever worries about paying bills, you know, whether the lights are left on or whether the heating is on or whatever, because no one else seems to equate to this costs money sort of thing. But
Well, electric lights, we've put in all those energy efficient LED lights now, and I don't think they're too bad. So I don't feel too guilty about having the odd decorative lamp. There was a stage where my husband would be like, turn it off, but now it's hardly anything.
See, I always have the sort of my mother's voice in the back of my head. What do you think this is, Blackpool Illuminations, because you've left a light on in a hallway somewhere? So that was drilled into me.
Yeah.
And I think you're right, Eamonn. I think that people have forgotten that these things cost money. And yes, LED light bulbs are more energy efficient, but your electricity bill is still high. You've got to go turn them off.
Well said.
An award-winning baker has created a cake that looks like a pot of paint. I don't know if have we got a picture of this? Everybody goes silent. Oh, there it is there. Right. So that's a cake. It's obviously strawberry cake, I would have thought. You see, there's nothing appetizing about it. I don't want to eat a tin of
but my kids love watching this show on TV. We were talking about Blue Peter yesterday.
Oh, it's
Forget
incredible.
Blue Peter. Is it
Netflix
cake?
one. Yeah.
Is it cake? Hours of fun, and they get literally like a duck, and then
it will look like that. It will look like that.
And they have to guess, and
Yeah.
it's like a quiz, and then they cut it open and eat the duck. And you're like, no way.
So you have to guess if it's a cake or a real duck.
Yeah. Or whatever the object might be, pet tin of paint. It's incredible.
I mean, it is. And I just want to, you appreciate the skill that has gone into these things. And it is. It's one of those. And my son also on social media will scroll through and show me varying different clips of a plant pot or something that looks like a lasagna, which is actually a cake. And I can't quite get my head around it, why you would want to eat something that looks like a plate of spaghetti bolognese, which is actually a fruitcake. And I just, in my mind, it doesn't work. But I love the skill of it. I think it's great.
It's a spin on Bake Off, isn't it?
Yeah.
But in order for it to have the structural integrity of a tin of Dulux, it's got to be about 95% sugar. So you're buying into it, and all you will taste is sugar. And I would rather just have a nice chocolate eclair. I'd rather have a nice bit of trifle.
Oh, no.
I don't care what it looks like. Get it in the bowl, get it in my belly, get out of the way. Come on, let's go.
Oh, you can't appreciate the fact that somebody has spent time and effort. And I don't eat a lot of cake, but you can't beat it. If somebody has made you a lemon drizzle cake,
time and effort on taste. I don't care what it looks like.
Yes. See, my guilt would come from the fact, the tin of Dulux paint there, for instance, that it is such work of art. I'm simply destroying it just to bite and eat into it. I would rather it was much plainer, then I wouldn't feel guilty about ruining the work of art.
Where'd you put the candles on that cake?
That's a very good point, mate.
That is a very good point.
That's part of the joy of the programme, is it cake, is they then get set challenges, and you see the stress that's involved in trying to create these. It's like architectural. You need an engineer.
You do, and you need sort of, some great big sort of cage around it to make sure it stands up and all the rest of it. I mean, it is really, really clever, and it's addictive viewing.
Claire and Andy, we say thank you very much for going through the papers with us this hour. We'll have more from them just after 7:30. I just want to give an update on this ongoing situation in Brussels. We know the shooter at large. Well, France in the last few moments have announced that they are stepping up border security with Belgium following on from that attack where 2 people lost their lives and 1 person was injured. We'll keep a close eye on developments there.
More on that and the conflict in the Middle East with the defence editor of the Evening Standard. We've got Robert Fox coming into the studio, and we'll be crossing live to our reporter Charlie Peters in Tel Aviv next.